Well, our donors are pledging nearly $352 million to help Uganda cope with a massive influx of refugees fleeing conflict in South Sudan. The United Nations Refugee Agency, UNHCR, and Uganda are hosting a meeting in the capital Kampala on Friday aimed at raising some $2 billion to plug funding shortages for the East African country's surging refugee population. Uganda is hosting about 1.3 million refugees, of which an estimated 950,000 have arrived from South Sudan. Journalist Halima Athumani is at the Refugee Summit in Kampala and now joins us live via Skype. Halima, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres visited the Uganda refugee camps. Describe to us, how are the conditions there?
Vincent, yesterday we were with the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres in Mvepi in Arua, that is in northern Uganda. And I must say the situation there is very dire. One of the conversations that he had, which was rather passionate for him, was with a woman who would run with her family. And he asked her and said, "Why did you run away?" For her, she said she was running away from the war, but mainly she was also running away from hunger. So for her, it was more of running away from a hard place onto, she was caught up between a rock and a hard place. Imagine running away from war, running away from hunger, but also coming into a country that is struggling to feed the huge population of refugees that it has. And that's what the situation is like in most of the refugee camps. Most of the refugees are complaining about not having food. Some of them are missing the food ratios. They're given food that is supposed to take them through a 30-day cycle, and it's really becoming very difficult for the World Food Programme to feed them.
And now we know that the summit was seeking to get at least about $2 billion worth of pledges, but up to this point, the figures are much smaller than that. Why is that the case?
Very true. There were several pledges coming in. For example, we had maybe the least amounts coming in from a country like Somalia that contributed 100,000. We had our neighbors Kenya contribute 200,000 US dollars, and of course we had the biggest donors being the EU with about 94 million US dollars. So the money is coming in little by little. Antonio Guterres did say that he was hopeful more countries will pledge, but right now it seems most countries have their hands tied. They do not have the money to release and to help Uganda feed and sustain these millions of refugees that they are currently hosting.
And Halima, for Mr. Guterres, this refugee issue is rather familiar to him, right?
Extremely familiar. Yesterday, he mentioned that 10 years back, he was in Uganda at the same refugee camp. And at that time, I think that was when we had the war between South Sudan and Sudan. And at that time, the refugees that came from South Sudan at the time came into Uganda. And he said, I was there with these women and children and men. They were singing songs of joy. And for them, they had hope that they were going back to a country to build a new life, to build a new future. But right now, they are running away from their country. So for him, it really pained him to see that the people he thought he actually met way back and hoping that they were going back to their country to rebuild their lives are actually coming back and are going through this hard situation. So yes, it was very, very personal for him.
Thank you. We hope for the best and hope that the conflicts will end so people don't have to be in refugee camps. Halima, thank you very much for your reporting.
Thank you, Vincent.
That's Halima Athumani, who is a Uganda-based journalist.